Disaster Recovery Institute International.
DRI International.
Disaster
DRI
Recovery.
International.
Disaster Recovery Institute International.
Hello, I'm Russell Wooldridge, DRI International's Senior Director of Business Development. I'm pleased to welcome you to the final day of our Resilience Excellence Summit. Today's agenda includes experts on cyber resilience, as well as our Awards of Excellence program. Before we get to all that, a few housekeeping items. The summit will be available for viewing on our website. All registrants will receive an email when it's posted to that website. You may apply for 2 CEAPs for each day of the summit for a total of 6. And I'd also like to thank BlackBerry, our exclusive sponsor, as well as our speakers, award winners, award finalists, and of course, you, the attendees. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Ron Ross. Ron is a fellow at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. His focus area includes computer security, system security engineering, trustworthy systems, and security risk management. He currently leads the NIST Systems Security Engineering Project, which includes the development of the standards and guidelines for the federal government, its contractors, and the United States critical infrastructure. He also supports the U.S. State Department in the International Outreach Program for Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Protection. He previously served as the task leader for the Joint Task Force, an interagency group that includes the Department of Defense, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, U.S. Intelligence Community, and the Committee on National Security Systems, with responsibility for developing a unified information security framework for the federal government. He also served as the project leader for the Federal Information Security Modernization Act implementation project and is the former director of the National Information Assurance Partnership, a joint activity of NIST and the National Security Agency. During his 20-year military career, he served as a White House aide and a senior technical advisor to the Department of the Army. He has lectured at a number of prestigious universities and has authored and co-authored many publications on risk management, cybersecurity, systems security engineering, and cyber resiliency. He has received numerous public and private sector awards. He's also been recognized 3 times as one of the top 10 influencers in government IT security, and is a 5-time recipient of the Federal 100 Award for leadership and technical contributions to cybersecurity projects affecting the federal government. He has been inducted into the Cybersecurity Hall of Fame, selected as an ISC squared fellow, and inducted into the Information System Security Association Hall of Fame, receiving its highest honor of Distinguished Fellow. Dr. Ross holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in engineering from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. He also holds both a master's and PhDs in computer science from the United States Naval Postgraduate School, specializing in artificial intelligence and robotics. Hi, Ron. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Russell. It's great to be with you today.
First question we've got, we polled our certified professionals that registered for the summit. And so the first question right off the bat is one about Black Swan events. So in the after an event is triggered, the business continuity protocols, and a business gets hit with a Black Swan event. In the lessons learned after the event, the ones involved would tend to overdo to ensure that that Black Swan event never happens again. How do you suggest we prevent this overcompensation from happening, as it seems to be counterintuitive and might end up draining resources from other kinds of preparation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's the key to really what we talk about in risk management as far as cybersecurity goes and other types of enterprise risk management. You know, every business has a mission and a set of customers to support, and they try to do their best to apply the best protocols and, in the case of cybersecurity, best security controls to protect the systems that are supporting those missions and business operations. Black Swan events are exactly like they're described. They're things that you can't predict. They're kind of the coming together of many bad things all together for what could be a catastrophic event. And I think that's very difficult to plan for. And I think the key today in the world of cybersecurity and hostile cyberspace, where every company has systems they depend on to help them, conduct their missions and business operations, you have to do what we call due diligence. It's understanding that there is a potential problem protecting your data, your assets that are part of that system that you have to operate, and then doing reasonable things that would help protect that data and protect your critical missions and business operations. Trying to protect against Black Swan events and what's worse, trying to overcompensate after you have a series of bad things happen. That's a danger that a lot of companies should try to avoid. Doing due diligence is the basic blocking and tackling, the everyday things you can do to help protect your systems. And then having a good disaster recovery program. Continuity of operations is very critical in cybersecurity. And we have special publications about that at NIST, and it's just doing the due diligence. I think if people do that, in 99% of the cases, they'll be just fine.
I like that phrase, blocking and tackling. That's something that really, I think, sets the stage for what our certified professionals do in these situations. When it comes to COVID-19, how do you think COVID-19 has changed the way executive boards and other leaders changes their vision of continuity, contingency planning, business recovery, and cybersecurity?
Wow, that's a great question. This past year with the pandemic has totally changed so many things in the continuity of operations, contingency planning. I can tell you from the federal government that once the pandemic hit, the biggest effect initially, and I'm sure this is true in the private sector as well, we had a complete movement from within inside our perimeters, our boundaries, to other locations, mostly from home. Telework, which we've been doing for many, many years, all of a sudden became complete telework. And so all of those assets, the systems that you're running, and the ability for you to conduct your operations and your business functions, now that was dependent upon having people coming in from the outside and having all the necessary protections and to secure all of those different communications links and everything. That really was unprecedented. We've learned a tremendous amount from this past year. The other thing I would say is that it's going to change the business model for a lot of companies. The way they found that they can do a lot of work remote that they never thought they could do before. That's going to impact the physical facilities, the amount of physical space, brick and mortar that you have, and that will affect the continuity of operations, the business continuity plans. And frankly, I think this pandemic has shown us that we can be very resilient. And that's going to get better as we learn the lessons from the pandemic. I think that's going to really help us do continuity of operations, business continuity planning a whole lot better than we even did it before.
Well, in light of the recent cyber attacks, given that everybody's working from home, that cyber bad guys have not slowed down because of the pandemic, how do we improve cybersecurity and cyber resilience? Given, let's dig deep into that thought.
Well, cybersecurity, I believe you have to treat this problem like an ecosystem problem. In other words, we saw with the recent cyber attacks on the SolarWinds attack and things like that. Those are not new. The adversary is coming at us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they're very sophisticated. Some of these attacks are very high end. They're not just attacking the federal government, they're attacking a lot of our private sector companies for different reasons, intellectual property, research and development, and those kinds of things. But you have to kind of look at the system as a set of system elements. So a system has lots of moving parts to it. There's hardware, there's software, applications. All of those things are kind of the things that come together and give that system a capability that supports missions and business operations. But then there's also things that are not technical. There are people, processes, procedures, all of the things that companies bring together to try to define the capability, how it's going to be protected, and the people have to be able to interact with those processes on a day-to-day basis. So I think the biggest thing that we learned is that whatever safeguards and countermeasures that you're deploying within an office environment, there needs to be a concerted effort to move those same safeguards to your remote locations. Now, where that becomes difficult is a lot of people were running business applications and doing connectivity from their home computers. And the problem with that is that everything that goes on in that home computer before you hook up to the office environment, all of that potential for malicious code to be downloaded, there's just a hostile cyberspace doesn't stop at the boundaries. They go into commercial office places. For example, if you go to one of your favorite websites and you think it's a safe website like Lowe's or Home Depot, that website could have already been pre-infected with malicious code waiting for someone to just hit that website. And then in a nanosecond, that malicious code becomes part of your system. And they may install a keystroke logger on your keyboard to capture passwords, or they may be able to exfiltrate critical company information from your home computer. So investing in the safeguards for those home systems so they can be as secure as the ones in the office, that to me would be a priority if I were doing this from the pandemic perspective.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. There are state actors, there are bad guys at a national level that are attacking and hacking you, and they've proven that they can hack U.S. Critical systems, supposedly the most secure systems, in the world. How can we even remotely protect ourselves? I mean, is it just rolled down to best practice, or what do you think? Well, it is true. They are very capable adversaries, some at the nation state level, some at the cyber criminals, terrorist groups. But we all have kind of one thing in common. Even some of the most sophisticated breaches, like the most recent one, many times the adversaries will get a foothold in your system for very simple things. One of the things that they try to compromise would be credentials, passwords. There are various techniques and tools they use to get access to passwords that allow them entry into systems. Using something called multi-factor authentication, which you may describe to some people, like when you log into your bank's website, they may not give you access until they send you back a PIN on your cell phone. It's a different device, and that's a second factor that allows them to really understand that you are who you say you are. But the same types of vulnerabilities that they're getting in on these high-end federal systems, a lot of those same vulnerabilities end up in the home systems that you use on a day-to-day basis. So everybody can benefit from doing best practices. And whether you want to follow the NIST cybersecurity framework, we have so many different tools and
things you can use to help secure those enterprises on our website. They're all free of charge, and that's the kind of the first step to help lock down the enterprise. Now that doesn't mean that you're never going to be breached, because that's the point of having disaster recovery and continuity of operations in a cybersecurity context. Planning for those types of breaches and figuring out how is the company going to react once that happens. That kind of playbook has to be put in place well ahead of time, because once that attack happens, you are basically running on adrenaline, and that's not the time to start figuring out what you have to do. So there's a lot of planning that goes into it, but I still believe that the basic blocking and tackling can help enterprises get 99% of the way toward better protection and helping secure their data and their critical assets.
Mm-hmm. Let's move a little broader for a second. We've talked about cybersecurity and some of this nation state stuff and the vulnerabilities that exist. But what are the biggest challenges that do you see of integrating your business continuity approach? You talked about having an approach, connecting your business continuity processes on the business side and connecting that to your cybersecurity program.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest challenges every organization has today, to include the federal government. The model that I like to use and talk about a lot is, I'm a huge NASA fan and a huge NASCAR fan. I've followed both those organizations for years because they operate in high intensity, high risk environments, and they do really well. And one of the things you're going to find both in NASCAR and in NASA are something called the Integrated Project Team. And the best example I can give you is a famous story when President Kennedy was visiting NASA. This was long time ago when we were first starting the space program. And the president was walking down the hall and he came across a janitor pushing a broom. And the janitor said, "Good morning, Mr. President." And the president said, "Oh, good morning. What is your job here at NASA?" And he said, "Mr. President, I am helping put a man on the moon." And what that represents is the concept of the integrated project team means that everybody in the organization understands the mission and their place in helping the organization be successful. In the case of business continuity operations and kind of marrying that up with cybersecurity and cybersecurity contingency planning, it goes back to that same concept, ensuring that your cybersecurity professionals are part of the integrated project team. So as you're talking about mission and business processes within the organization, how they support the critical missions and business functions of the organization, and how you're going to protect those, and what the business continuity plan is going to be if something bad happens. The security folks are part of that discussion early on in the process. And we found that when you do that, they have a place at the table. They're a stakeholder, and their ideas and their thoughts can be integrated into that business continuity planning process. There is a cyber component, and an important cyber component to every business continuity plan, and that will kind of bleed into the contingency planning, the disaster recovery, incident response. All of those things have to be integrated into that overarching process. And when you do that with some consistency and commitment, it usually has a much better outcome.
Well, in looking at other organizations and looking outward from, using your lens, how are organizations using the integrated project approach, or how are they integrating cybersecurity and cyber resilience into their broader resiliency programs? What have you seen?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some organizations do it very well, and other ones don't. And I think that, to me, is still one of our biggest impediments today. When you look at an organization from the C-suite level all the way down to the mission business process and then to the systems level, it's kind of a hierarchy. But that hierarchy requires good communication up and down that chain. And what we just talked about is making sure the right people are around the table. That's kind of the first step. And if that doesn't occur, then usually that lack of communication causes problems downstream. So it's not an easy, sometimes it goes against the culture of the organization. We're just not used to working like that. And I think again, there are great examples on the federal government side and the private sector side of how that integration process takes place. But to me, we have complete dependence on our information systems today, almost in every organization. So more than any time in history, that dependence is going to require that collaboration, that cooperation across all of the different components within the enterprise in order to ensure that everybody, that their views are heard. We can do better risk management, because without having all those voices around the table and trying to ensure that their particular aspect of that continuity planning, that business continuity planning, or that disaster recovery, it has been attended to. If we don't do that, then there'll be gaping holes, and that's going to be the place that will cause the greatest damage if we don't do that kind of planning.
Right, and the whole trying to get those people around that table to have that meeting in the COVID environment is yet another challenge to cybersecurity as well. Which kind of leads me to my next question. You know, because we are all working from home, and we are relying so heavily on computer support, not just for the daily work we're doing, but for, you know, having conversations like this one, or having team-wide conversations with 20, 30, 40 people. You're going into individual homes. And so my next question is that impact. We've got the Internet of Things. My refrigerator has an impact on what we're doing today. So let's think in terms of, you know, those impacts on cybersecurity and cyber threat and cyber resilience. The fact that the Internet of Things is out there, you know, right. Somebody may be listening to this from their intelligent automobile. So let's tackle that for a second. You know, the idea that we're all working from home. What is that impact?
Well, it's a huge impact, because when we talk about a system today, you just described it very well. Our systems consist of trillions of lines of code, billions of devices in the Internet of Things. You talked about smart refrigerators. We have smart grids now for the electric sector. We have automobiles that are connected. Everything is connected, and we are fully operational that way. Now, when you're in that mode, that makes your attack surface. The adversaries look at this from an attack perspective. The more things you have in your system that are connected, the greater that attack surface is. So I believe the first responsibility of every enterprise is to try to simplify their information systems and the components they bring together. And the second thing is to isolate those things that are most critical from everything else. To give you an example, back in 2015, we had a really devastating cyber attack on the Office of Personnel Management, the OPM attack. The Chinese had attacked the system and had been in the system for about 7 months before they were discovered. And before it was all over, they had exfiltrated about 22.5 million records of some of the most sensitive information the government keeps. It was all the background investigation information on all the federal employees, military members. It was bad. Now, the point is,
let me make sure we're clear. Yeah. You said, what was that number?
22.5 million records.
Million?
Yes, it was. And just to give you an idea about, this is, again, goes back to a system architecture issue. Every company has a lot of data. They have lots of databases, and they have lots of connected devices. The first thing the most critical thing any organization can do is to do a criticality analysis of all the systems, components, and data we have. We have a standard. One of our very first cybersecurity standards was FIPS 199. I call it the triage standard. We developed it based on battlefield medicine. You treat the sucking chest wounds before you treat the hangnails. And so there's a triage. Every federal data item and system is categorized. It's either high impact, moderate impact, or low impact, where impact is the impact on the mission or the business if that system is breached or compromised. Now, why is this important? You can't protect everything to the highest degree because, as you were talking about, Russell, the complexity is overwhelming. So what we can do is we can identify our most critical data, our most critical assets, And then we can separate that data and those assets into their own security domain. In essence, we can kind of segment that critical data and those system elements off from everything else, which means if there is a cyber attack on your systems, the adversary would have to be able to work harder to get into that domain has greater protection. Now, that's not always easy to do, but it's essential, because otherwise, once the adversary gets into your system, I'll use an analogy of our house. You have a lock on your front door. If the bad guys get through the front door, they can rifle through every room of your house and steal your jewelry, your valuables, whatever you have. On the other hand, if once they get into they get through your front door, if every room in your house has a vault, then that's going to slow them down and increase their work factor. They may get discouraged, go someplace else. We know how to design our systems with that type of separation or stronger domains. But a lot of organizations don't do that. So the impact is like what happened at OPM. Once they get in, they just clean the house out. And then you're left with picking up the pieces. So again, these are kind of fundamental systems engineering concepts that are well known. And that's maybe the first investment I would make as a company, is someone that can come in, look at my architecture, look at my data, and help me segregate things so I'm not exposing the entire company's assets to one cyber attack.
Well, that actually is going to lead to the next question. We had a number of people in our certified professional population ask about key performance indicators, whether it's criticality points or identifying core assets. Give us some ideas on what are those key metrics and how to track that kind of information.
Well, performance indicators and key performance indicators can vary, as you know, organization to organization. But one of the absolutely essential things, I think, is strong leadership at the top of the organization. A leadership team that understands that they are totally dependent on these information systems that help the business be successful. And then having that understanding, ensuring that the right people are brought in to advise them on what kinds of things they should be doing to help have adequate security in the organization. Adequate security is a term that we use. It's going to be different for every organization. Every organization has a different type of mission or business operation, different business models, and they have to understand on a personal level what their critical assets look like. And once that kind of process takes place, bringing the right people in and ensuring there's the proper communication from the C-suite all the way down to the implementers. It's kind of like we go back to the NASA example, the integrated project team. When a NASA was getting ready to do a launch, they would go around that table, and every one of those key stakeholders would have to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If the thumbs down happened, they would stop the launch sequence, fix the problem, and then restart the launch sequence. And so I think, to me, a key indicator would be senior leadership being informed, senior leadership understanding what skills are necessary to help them protect their critical assets. And then the third thing, kind of an ongoing monitoring of their security program, because in the world of cyberspace and cyber attacks, protecting on day one is not a static exercise, because the threat space is always changing. And your continuity of operations plans and your disaster recovery plans should reflect the latest type of cyber threats and the latest types of things that are out there that could impact the organization. So if you don't have that command, control, and communication, to me, that's the most important key performance indicator, along with understanding basic blocking and tackling, and then being able to have some way of measuring if those basic measures are being implemented.
One of the things that our certified professionals are keenly aware of is standards and regulatory requirements. And I know that they would love to get your opinion, get your take on things like GDRP and CCPA,
Right.
regulatory requirements for privacy, and how do you respond to the increasing threats in that kind of regulatory environment?
Well, it's a difficult problem because not every organization is subject to regulations. It depends on what you're doing and what industry you're in. If you're in the electric industry, you're heavily regulated with FERC and NERC and all the things. And we've been reading about those recently with the Texas situation. But on the other hand, whether there's regulation or not, and regulation consumes a lot of organizations' time and attention because they have to make sure they meet all the requirements from whatever regulatory body they're dealing with. But even if we didn't have regulations and there was nothing that required you to do that, you do have the obligation to protect the organization's business and the mission and the customers that you're serving. Now with privacy, privacy is kind of rides, just it's equally important to cybersecurity. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. The fact that we have so much information now out there, whether you're using social media or whether you're on the internet, or just the fact that we can capture and store so much information. Some of that information, a lot of the information today is what we call personally identifiable information or personal health information. And there are lots and lots of requirements to protect that kind of data. You mentioned GDPR and the California Consumer Protection Act. Those are two of the larger, more significant ones that have come out in the last few years. And so it means that in addition to worrying about cybersecurity, organizations now, they should be looking at some of those requirements. NIST has a whole body of security controls and privacy controls we've recently added to our catalog that all of your organizations can use. They're all on our website and they're there. You can download them and you can see how they would work within your organization. The trick is to try to implement any of these security and privacy controls in the context of how your organization does business. Every organization has a different risk tolerance, and that impacts the way they manage risk. It's going to impact their business continuity plans, and all of that becomes tailorable and specialized to the organization, and that's the way it should be.
You've been listening to a conversation with Dr. Ron Ross, Fellow of the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Ron, thank you for your time, thank you for your expertise, and thank you for your service.
Thanks very much, Russell. And thanks to all the folks out there who are listening to this today. We appreciate everything you do for us and helping keep us safe as well. Thank you.
DRI International created the Resilient Enterprise Certification as a way of recognizing an organization's extraordinary commitment to achieving resilience in the areas of risk, business continuity, incident response, disaster recovery, and crisis management. In order to achieve this distinction, organizations must subject themselves to a rigorous examination of not only their resilient capabilities, but also the commitment of their executive body to a strong governance and oversight process, an awareness campaign to ensure that all levels of the company are committed to resilience, and constant testing of their capabilities. Copa Airlines, marking 8 decades of continuous growth and progress from its earliest beginnings when it flew between 2 cities in Panama to its current status as one of the leading airlines in the Americas, has achieved its success by dedicating itself to the highest level of service. To achieve this level of service requires a commitment to reducing risks and responding to potential interruptions in the most expeditious manner to ensure the safety of passengers and employees. While COVID has had a high impact on Copa Airlines business and to the entire industry, thanks in part to its disciplined approach to managing resilience, Copa is well positioned to weather this crisis. DRI International's Resilient Enterprise Assessment Program examined Copa Airlines' entire program. Since the introduction of Resilient Enterprise Accreditation in 2015, no organization has attained a higher rating than Copa Airlines. I am proud to bestow the DRI International Resilient Enterprise Accreditation to Copa Airlines. Accepting on their behalf are Daniel Gunn, Senior Vice President of Operations, and Mariana Querras, Business Continuity Director. Congratulations.
Thank you, Al. Well, these are strange times and it feels odd to be accepting an award right now. I'm very proud of the great work the entire Copa team has done to merit this and happy to accept this award today. Reliability has been a critical part of Copa's commercial success for many years. We have consistently produced industry-leading on-time performance and operational reliability to accompany our focused safety culture and the great service our staff provides. This has been a winning formula for a long time. To ensure our reliability, the team at Copa created a strong and structured business continuity program, which enjoys the buy-in of all levels of management and is supported by a small but very effective and dedicated staff. To ensure that we have created the most resilient program possible, at the beginning of 2020, we engaged DRI International to provide an objective and external assessment of our program. And we're very grateful to receive these great results today. Thank you.
Let me share with you a little more about the process. It was professional and thorough, and we worked in a cooperative manner with the Disaster Recovery Institute to improve the program. The result of the assessment showed that Copa's program was well-defined, enjoyed the commitment and compliance of the complete operative team, and the most important part is that it works, showing a proven mitigation of the impact during a real event. I would like to take a few seconds to recognize the extraordinary teamwork between the top management, BCM direction, the IT team, and the business area to implement and adopt the DRR's best practices. This award is for all of you guys. Congratulations.
Thank you once again, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.
Welcome to the final day of our annual DRI International Awards of Excellence, recognizing the best and the brightest in the resilience community. I'm Russell Wooldridge, and I'm once again joined by my co-host Ramon Pinero of BlackBerry Ad Hoc, the exclusive sponsor of our summit.
Thanks, Russell. First up is the Newcomer of the Year Award, welcoming those who are new to the profession and bring with them fresh ideas and perspectives. The award recognizes up-and-coming leaders who display ingenuity and understand the wider impact of business continuity within their organizations. This year's finalists are James Chris Bowden, Vice President, Single Family Operational Risk Services, Strategic Delivery, Data and Operations Division, Freddie Mac. Anna Kornishak, Advisory Consultant, Fusion Risk Management. Tasha Kovac, ABCP Emergency Response Technician, Shell.
And the winner is Tasha Kovac, Shell. And now we recognize the Team of the Year honoring excellent business continuity teams. those who demonstrate the essential ingredients of collaboration and communication internally across their organizations and beyond.
The finalists are Commercial International Bank, Egypt; OCC, Business Continuity Team; USAA.
And the winner is USAA. The Product and Service Provider of the Year award is next. This year, you chose from 10 outstanding nominees. The winner is chosen by our community of DRI certified professionals who voted online. And the nominees are Agility Planner and Agility Alerts, Agility Recovery; BlackBerry; Castellan Solutions; Continuity and Resilience; Continuity Logic; Fusion Risk Management; Infinite Blue; Recovery Planner, BCM Software and Consulting; SIM, BCM Sandbox Gaming; and Viochi. And the winner is Infinite Blue. Our final award this year is the Lifetime Achievement Award, recognizing the most experienced professionals in the industry for the stellar work they've done over the course of their careers. The winner is chosen by our community of DRI certified professionals who voted online. This year, we have a tie.
The nominees are Harvey Baton, MBCP Principal, H. Baton Inc.; Robert Futio, Vice President of Enterprise Resiliency and Security, ERS, Fannie Mae; Wasim Malik, MBCP Global Head of BCM, Bravura Solutions; Frank Perlmutter, CBCP Founder, the Perlmutter Fund for Animal Welfare; Leah Sawyer, MBCP Business Continuity Manager, Staples Inc.; Damon Dev Sood, Advisor, Continuity and Resilience; Belinda Wilson, Senior Director, Gartner; Brian Zawada, Chief Operating Officer, Castellan Solutions.
And our winners are Harvey Baton and Belinda Wilson.
Hi, I'm David Wiseman, Vice President of Secure Communications at BlackBerry, and I'm joined today by Ramon Pinero, who's our Vice President of Product and Services for BlackBerry Ad Hoc. Today, we're going to have a conversation about how AI and machine learning will transform critical event management. It's been a really interesting past year. You know, all types of critical events have bubbled up. Obviously, the ones around the pandemic, but also a lot of cyber attack issues, a lot of IT system outages as people have moved to remote working. And that's really just increased the need for organizations in general to do a better job of holistically managing, all of the different types of critical events that they face as they're doing their business. So, whether that's a natural disaster, whether it's a cyber attack, an IT outage, all of these, there's a set of processes that need to be dealt with. How do you prepare in advance? How do you respond? How do you recover? And how do you really learn from what you did and improve so the next time around, the critical event is going to have a lower impact on your organization. But at the same time, there's some changes that are really happening in the market and the technology in general. And we're going to start to see a lot of evolution in how we actually work through these processes. And that's what we're going to really focus on today. So I'd like to welcome Ramon. Welcome, Ramon.
David, it's great to be here, and we're lucky to be here too. The last business trip I took was for this exact conference last March in 2020, and it's incredible journey that we've had since then, serving our customers under these constraints and really learning about the challenges that we faced over the last year. Thanks again. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and talking about the last year and things we've learned, can we give a few examples of that? What are some of the key learnings that you've seen people have?
There's a lot of key learnings for this past year. First, let me recognize this entire crowd. Everybody in this conference helped our organization to deal with or to recover from the varied events that we all experienced. The pandemic and COVID, of course, wildfires here and abroad in Australia, civil unrest in the United States, a global cyber attack for SolarWinds. And it's together that we kind of learn from all of the challenges that we had to deal with. Now, some organizations that we've serviced today were ready. Some thought they were ready. Some were completely unprepared and caught off guard. Those challenges that we experienced within our own organization were around IT readiness. Is there enough bandwidth for the VPN, for the entire BlackBerry corporation to work from home? Was there enough laptops? The collision in the personal life and work life with school, kids at home, and the demands of work, accounting for personnel, and how we were able to assess the safety status of BlackBerry employees while protecting their privacy and their health information, and adapting to a new way in servicing their customers under the constraints of the pandemic. We couldn't travel anywhere. I mean, in some situations, we really had to adapt to a new way in which to deliver solutions for systems that our customer needed at a moment's notice.
So the organizations that were unprepared or not fully prepared, what were some specific challenges that they were encountering?
Well, we saw lack of coordination across the organization. So some organizations like IT had plans, business continuity teams had other plans, supply chain managers had yet other plans, and a lot of times in our experience, those plans were not well coordinated or codified across the organization, so they were siloed in a sense. We also saw organizations with a lack of expertise or manpower. So that is HR, they were doubling as business continuity practitioners, but no real concrete plan for a pandemic or how to send their employee or workforce home safely so that they can work and mitigate cyber incidents now that they're on their home Wi-Fi, if you will. We saw inconsistencies in collaboration tools, a gap in the ability to communicate broadly across the entire organization, or real-time collaboration across the departments, some departments using Teams, other on a chat client like Slack, others coordinating through SMS. And then a lack of centralization or awareness of their processes, right? If the response process did exist, the general population of the employee base didn't know. And so it was a scramble to get people ready to work from home, and it was a scramble to get the insights of the safety status back to the decision makers in the organization. We thought and saw and recognized that it's important to codify and standardize, train, and exercise those processes, as you all know, but equally as important is to invest in standardization of the tools as well. So some departments using Teams, some using SMS, all to quarterback the response to these incidents was just ineffective. And that's where we were able to help, and one of the main learnings during this last year.
Thanks, Ramon. So, most organizations are able to kind of muddle through and actually recover from that pretty quickly and get running in new ways in record time. But, when we look forward, there's actually going to be a lot of changes that start to happen in this market space in terms of capabilities and some specific technologies such as AI, machine learning, automation that are actually going to change how we go through that workflow and that response flow to a critical event. But let's talk about that and what the impact's going to be on how people are doing their jobs going forward.
That's really important, Dave. You're spot on. So first, it's important to really emphasize the need for one platform. You can't be switching applications expecting to effectively manage the entire incident lifecycle. That's one. Now, since that's the key, it's also key that those particular platforms have the engineering and intelligence to help make fundamental decisions around these areas around preparedness, response, recovery, and improvement. Now, in this space, leveraging AI can help reduce your recovery time and avoid disruption. In the same way, your AI assistant on your phone helps you to arrive to a destination on time. It knows where I'm supposed to be. It knows where I am right now. And it knows factors that may impact my arrival time. So it warns me, you should leave now. You're expected to be across town in 20 minutes, and there's been an accident. So why not apply that same intelligence to the critical event management space?
So how do we actually do that? Say in terms of our preparation processes, our preparation plans, how can we apply AI and ML to improve that?
If we think about those different phases, first on the preparation, AI can help you build out your plans. It can identify the types of threats that you may face just based on the location of your personnel. So if you know that you're in a floodplain or in the Midwest where you're dealing with severe thunderstorms and tornadoes, and you're implementing your plans for the first time and building them out, then let the AI help to suggest and make you aware of the threats that surround you that may not be terribly obvious. In addition to that, you can help to accelerate the implementation of those plans so that you have the full spectrum of threats and their corresponding response plan ready when you need to activate.
And then when you start to activate and you move into response, you know, how do these technologies potentially help out, and how's that going to evolve over time?
Well, right from there, that's when the AI kicks into action. So it's constantly doing the analysis of threat intelligence and looking for the intersection of those threats against what you're planning for and your assets, your people, your buildings, your supply chain. So let the AI, in a sense, be your co-pilot and do the constant monitoring of what you care about the most and what may impact what you care about.
Ramon, and how do these new technologies start to blend into the recovery phase of critical event management?
Well, that's key. So the constant analysis of assessing the employee safety status or personnel safety status and surfacing those insights to stakeholders in the organization is what provides the decision support. What do I mean? How do I know that 14% of my building occupants are not healthy, right? I need to make a call. Do I shut down that building? Do I have everybody work from home? Do I bring the healthy occupants back? Surfacing those insights from the constant analysis in the background of the safety status and the threats, let's say it's a COVID case count, is key to providing that decision support. And that decision support can be done, again, by your AI co-pilot automatically and quickly. So your time is spent in other places.
So this kind of implies that, you know, everyone in the conference here, you know, this is their field. This is what they do. They built their expertise and careers around. Kind of implies that, you know, how they're going to do their job is going to evolve as well, probably, right? If the AI, that co-pilot starts taking on more and more, where are people going to put their added time and that they have available?
You know, I'd say in improving and preventing the situation, right? The AI is going to help surface the bottlenecks in your recovery or response times. It's up to you to overcome those bottlenecks, right, once they are recognized. How do you prevent an incident from happening at all? You know, one example is in the cyber world, where we could completely avoid a SolarWinds situation using the same technology. We have firsthand experience in that, where this same AI technology was deployed within our customer base before the 2017 WannaCry cyber attacks, and not one of our customers were impacted by those attacks because the AI was constantly monitoring the background and detected that threat. So we moved from time being spent monitoring situations because you let the technology do that for you, and you moved to prevention and overall improvement.
I mean, this also implies, you know, the greater need, I think, to kind of pull together a consistent system, a consistent process for all different types of critical events. Because as soon as you're starting to train machine models and have AI algorithms monitoring things, the more data, you know, the more effective it can be, I think. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely accurate. So the more exercising you do of the system, the more you train the system in knowing what you care about the most. You're exercising your different response plans based on the real world impacts that they may have to your organization. The AI will also start to help you exercise by suggesting when, how often.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point. You know, we kind of talked about the AI initially as the co-pilot. But once we get to the point where it's suggesting exercises, suggesting things to look out for, does at some point it actually become the pilot, and the teams and everything are keeping an eye on the pilot, but the pilot's in charge? How does that transition happen?
I think we're years away from that particular transition. You still need the practitioners, the captain of the ship, if you will, to maintain. There's times for autopilot and there's times for you to take control. As we see the technology develop, there will be a time where time is of the essence for a particular threat, so that you may automate the full end-to-end activation of a plan, the response procedures, and the communication completely through the AI. And where your time is spent ensuring that personnel and employee base is safe and the business is back up and running.
So Ramon, yeah, I think this is really exciting. It's going to open up new opportunities for people and how they're responding and managing these events and letting them become much more proactive, which is going to add significantly more value to the business in terms of maintaining the operations, in terms of maintaining the safety of the staff. It's really great that, you know, these technologies are now at a point where they can actually start to be introduced into critical event management. And I know your team at BlackBerry is deep into this, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with us. Any final thoughts, Ramon?
Yeah, I think that the takeaway is that the combination of cutting edge technology, in addition to decades of all of your experience as business continuity practitioners, together help to protect people, organizations, and get operations back up and running. So thank you very much, David.
Thanks, Ramon, and thanks everyone for attending this session.
Hi, my name is Lincoln Gady, and I'm a cybersecurity consultant. At a high level, what that means is that I identify, protect, detect, respond to, and recover from cybersecurity incidents. Previous to this role, I was part of the Business Continuity Management Organization, which includes business continuity, disaster recovery, risk management, incident management, and crisis management. So, and this is part of my current organization and also many large and small organizations too throughout my career. Cybersecurity and business continuity are no longer separate and distinct considerations, as they need to work together to minimize costs, minimize risks, protect data, and execute a streamlined, timely, and effective response to any attack or data breach. When you take a holistic view of business continuity management, a cyber attack is just another possible scenario in the long list of incidents that entities should be prepared to effectively respond to and recover from. As a certified cyber resilience professional, we minimize the cyber impact to IT and OT networks by bridging the gap between cybersecurity and the business. How do we do that? As part of cybersecurity, we're going to work with the risk management group. So, and this is to minimize the amount of cyber risk to the organizations. We help create standards and policies for the organizations, and we also work with vendors before they get onboarded by looking at their cyber risk. Our incident response group, they own the incident run books that are playbooks with documented steps to follow during specific cyber attacks. During their process, they're going to do an investigation on the specific attack, on what was compromised, the type of data that was compromised, if there was any. And we'll work with crisis management, incident management, and business continuity, and other groups within the organization on what that means to them. So for example, if we have data that was compromised that was customer data, they would want to have something within their own run books to minimize the risks to the customers. They're going to have to do something for the customers to help them out so that they don't get compromised going forward. For the disaster recovery group, we work with them on ransomware attacks. We validate that they're able to recover from some type of a ransomware attack by validating that they don't have all their backups online and available for a ransomware attack. So, one effective way that we've used to work with each one of these groups is to have periodic discussions within the groups. So it could be cybersecurity and just one of the areas within the business continuity management group, or as a whole, and then we can have large group discussions. Now, your company may be a little bit different, but ours is set up where each one of these are going to be its own individual group. So otherwise, in smaller organizations, it could be the same person that's working on, say, all 5 of these areas. So the reason why we do this is because cyber resilience translates to the ability for an entity to anticipate, withstand, recover from, and evolve to improve capabilities in the face of adverse cyber conditions on the supporting resources your company needs to function.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this DRI Resilience Excellence Summit. I am Rakesh Pandey. I represent DRI International in India and the region. The topic, challenges in cyber resilience, is indeed very, very challenging because of the very fact the understanding of the term cyber resilience is different. How people understand that a standard meaning would be to have an ITDR capability. Just to have capability, is it sufficient? No. It may mean different to different organizations. Example, a more complex organization may want a better, a more detailed ITDR capability. Public services website. Suppose an organization is providing public services. It can only do through a standard website. It could be HTTP or HTTPS, doesn't matter. When somebody writes www.xyz.com or .org, it goes to the website and that website provides a service. In case the website is down, can that organization have an alternate website in real-time basis or at a short notice? No. In the present day scenario, DNS changes update will take time. So you will be down for at least some times. Could be minimum 4 hours, maybe an hour. Is that good enough? Take more complex organizations such as stock exchanges. They require real-time backup and recovery capability because transactions are happening on a real-time basis, huge transactions having very high implications. Let us take an example of where online transaction processing of critical and sensitive systems require much higher data. As an example, many years back, I worked for a gaming company. For an example, as an example, I'm saying, you're playing cards. When you play cards, one move, second move, third move, 10th move, 11th move, you have to keep track of it, and you cannot have downtime. Or you cannot make a mistake in terms of the sequence of transactions. So resilience would mean different to different organizations. In this context, let us see what DRI International says about resilience. The bottom line is the ability to continuously deliver their products and services. To be very frank, these definitions is akin to having a PDCA model with a capability to deliver products and services. Because it talks about planning, implementation, check and act part. Similar is the definition in terms of cyber resilience, or resilience to be precise, when we refer to ISO standards. But the world is going to change. Trust me, we are going to change. Cyber resilience is going to become much more complex. I experienced it many years back when I was providing consultancy services to a big time player where DDoS attacks happened. The East European mafia blackmailed this company, was blackmailing this company, and the owner wanted a solution. Basically, he was looking for a resilient enterprise which could outsmart the DDoS attacks. We managed to do it. Towards the end of this presentation, I will tell you what is required to have that kind of a capability. But in the near future, what is coming up is this. When we talk about cyber resilience at national level, the entire outlook changes. Concept of drone swarms is going to be deployed in information warfare. It has a very big tactical advantage. The recent case of war between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan managed to beat Armenian army because of this one simple coordinated drone attacks. Convert this concept in an information warfare and then try and look at why or what should be cyber resilience. To match this kind of attacks, an organization should have the capability to adapt itself on real-time basis. How does one have this capability? When you buy software, hardware from a vendor, can you adapt it on a real-time basis? May not be. My experience shows that an organization which is highly dependent, for example, which is at the national level, a nation has to rise, build up its capability to be resilient in all its spheres. Then cyber resilience will play a decent role. Otherwise, you will always blame either the IBMs or the Dells or the Ciscos for your follies. That's it. Thank you for sparing your time and listening to me. I wish you the very best.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Wade Richmond, and it is my pleasure to spend a few minutes with you today as we review some observations and trends associated with cyber risk and resilience. So let's get at this. To start, let's level the stage on a few concepts. In a perfect world, an entity's systems would run without any problems 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But we don't live in a perfect world and stuff happens. And when it does, our entity's ability to carry on in the face of adversity depends on the resilience of its systems, processes, and people. Being a cyber resilient organization means being able to fight through adversity and continue to operate even if it is only in a somewhat degraded mode. And let's face it, even if we do everything perfectly, and that's rarely going to be the case, we're still going to see perhaps 5, maybe 10% of attacks getting through. It's also important for this presentation to level set on a couple of definitions. Cybersecurity focuses on protecting an entity from a cyber attack. It involves such things as firewalls, VPNs, anti-malware software, cyber hygiene, like patching software, firmware, and training employees about secure behavior. Cyber resilience focuses on what happens when cybersecurity measures fail, as well as when systems are disrupted by things such as human error, power outages, weather, etc. It considers whether an entity's operations are resilient on technology, where critical data is stored, and how those areas can be affected by disruption. And it involves putting measures in place to minimize the impact of those disruptions. For instance, the protocols to be followed in the event of a system breach would be part of a resiliency plan. Now, DRI offers a certification level course called CRLE 2000 that covers the nuances and specifics of ensuring your organization is cyber resilient. But I'm not going to review that course or its content today. The remainder of my time with you today is going to focus on a few observations and trends associated with cyber risk and resilience. So continued changes in our threat landscape have led leaders to paying more attention to cyber resilience and led to the following observations. There's been a shift in the kinds of attacks that are taking place. Think explosion of ransomware. Sophistication of the attacks keep getting better and better, and it's hard to defend when attackers have an ever-growing portfolio of tools that they can unleash on us. And despite our best efforts, they, the attackers, only need to win once to cause a catastrophic outage or impact. And of course, the global pandemic has certainly had an impact on how entities view resiliency. Remote work has increased the attack surface dramatically, and many entities simply weren't equipped to handle that shift. And expectations that all of our efforts around recovery from an attack could be done hands-on has proven incorrect. With everyone working remotely, it's no longer possible to simply walk over and re-image a machine. Remote work and the challenges and changing threat landscape have fueled several trends around cyber resilience. Now, I want to talk about 4 that I think leaders should be tracking. 1, cyber resilience should be integrated into cloud strategy. Cloud has always been a great resource for response and recovery. It provides scale on demand, the equivalent of warm sites in different availability zones, and automatically can scale up in response to an event like a DDoS attack by deploying more instances from a clean image. But the cloud is now integrated into more than just response and recovery. No longer is it looked at as something different, but integrated into the security stack. So entities are no longer dependent on on-prem infrastructure alone. And using the cloud to offer a, quote, as a service security allows controls to be applied consistently, regardless of location. And the massive push to the cloud by entities is changing their resiliency profile as well. Whether the user is in the office or at home, the same security controls are in place because the service is accessible anywhere. Secondly, zero trust has become key to resiliency strategies. A goal of resiliency is to limit the damage of an attacker and what they can do once they invade a system. Zero trust can do that by better limiting access and privileges of users. Zero trust moves organizations away from implicitly trusting someone on their network to using context, identity, and data to dictate what permissions an identity has within an environment. Now, implementing zero trust is a positive step towards achieving cyber resiliency, since organizations can reduce open access to systems coming into an environment, unless, of course, they are authenticated. And zero trust provides the ability to verify all people and devices before trusting them. By isolating unauthenticated devices, it increases efficiency and resiliency because it confines threats to one part of the network. It reduces the opportunity for a threat to access the main network, and it reduces the risk of an attack. Number 3 is resiliency has been enhanced by managed detection and response. Detecting threats and responding to them before they get worse is an important part of any resiliency plan. Shortages in skilled security personnel, though, have made it more difficult to meet that goal. The continuing advancement of the technology involved in recent attacks has made the use of managed environments even more attractive. And that's because it's harder and harder for our teams to keep up to speed with what's happening in the world around us. Managed detection and response services effectively provide entities with an extra set of hands to manage the detection and response process by enabling us to partner with a company that has more investigative expertise, more analytical expertise. They can do proactive threat hunting, and it helps our teams focus on other aspects of security as well. And the fourth trend I want to mention is resiliency lands in security products. What I mean by that is the increased interest in entities in resilience hasn't been lost on vendors. They've added features such as the ability to manage remote working environments and on-premise security capabilities for remote environments. This has led to a reasonable amount of new capability, but more than anything else, it's also created a shift in how vendors are stressing that value. Many capabilities have been reframed in a resilient form. For example, recasting standard DNS tools to include intelligence about what's happening on a network contributes to resiliency by creating an early warning system. File integrity monitoring allows for inspection of unauthorized or unexpected changes in files, which could trigger administrative alerts to investigate the cause. And vendors have begun taking a cloud-first initiative to build resilience into their products as well. Doing so, of course, increases the ability to handle traffic and data across availability zones, and it leverages cloud auto-scaling to auto-rebuild from configured images should existing instances become unstable due to some attack. Now, you may be familiar with the Alliance Group. They're a global insurer and a producer of their annual Alliance Risk Barometer. And just 7 years ago, cyber attack and cyber risk ranked as low as 15th in their annual survey. Today, it ranks either near or at the top of seemingly every risk poll conducted. Because over these 7 years, knowledge of the threats posed to businesses by cyber has grown. Yet, the number of related claims or losses have increased significantly as well. Entities are facing significant challenges, such as the prospect of more disruptive and expensive business interruptions, the increase in the frequency and cost of ransomware incidents, the consequences from larger data breaches and more robust regulation, and the prospect of litigation if something does go wrong. Also increasing these risks are the playing out of political differences in cyberspace and unexpected risks from even successful M&A activity. Compounding all of this is the fact that many employees are now working remotely, creating new opportunities for increased, better organized and funded cyber criminals to exploit. Potential impacts from human error or technical failures have also been heightened through this experience. So this slide is actually the top 10 business risks forecasted for 2021 by the Alliance Risk Barometer. Note again that cyber incidents rank as number 3 on their list. However, business interruption and pandemic outbreak can be closely associated with those cyber incidents as well. And when we dive even deeper into the trends specifically associated with cyber risk, the Alliance Group identifies these top 10 trends. Claims in cyber growing. External attacks cause the most expensive losses. Business interruption is the main cost driver behind claims. Remote working and COVID-19 has heightened these exposures. Ransomware incidents are more frequent and financially damaging. Business compromise email attacks are on the surge. Costs of mega data breaches are increasing. Regulatory exposures are increasing around the globe. Class action litigation is on the rise. M&A certainly brings with it cyber risk. And of course, nation state sponsored attacks are on the rise as well. We're going to focus down on some of these now. Lax security post-COVID-19 heightens cyber risk. With many companies having expanded their remote working capacities through the pandemic, often, to be honest, in very short notice, in order to provide as many employees as possible with easy access to software and systems, IT security standards may have had to be lowered or even suspended, putting cybersecurity under new levels of stress. Business interruption and digital supply chain vulnerabilities are growing. Digital disruption has become a much more significant driver of cyber losses, while cyber risk in supply chains is a growing exposure. Their analysis of cyber claims show that business interruption is the main cost driver in the majority of cases. Cyber and business interruption now rank at the top 2 risks for companies respectively, according to the Alliance Risk Barometer in 2020, which was conducted before the coronavirus outbreak and are increasingly interrelated. And ransomware is now the most prominent cybercrime threat. Already in high frequency, incidents are becoming more damaging, increasingly targeting large companies with sophisticated attacks and hefty extortion demands. 5 years ago, a typical ransomware demand would have been in the tens of thousands of dollars. Now, they can be in the millions. The consequences of an attack can be crippling, especially for organizations that rely on data to provide products and services. But it can also create significant damage for others in the supply chain, such as critical infrastructure. Business email compromise attacks are surging. More people are working from home, meaning new opportunities for criminal activities are generated. Prior to the pandemic, BEC incidents had already resulted in worldwide losses of at least $26 billion since 2016, and that's according to the FBI. Between May of 2018 and July of 2019, the number of incidents discovered worldwide doubled, with an average economic loss of $270,000. Mega breaches come with increasing costs. Now, the costs of dealing with large data breach is certainly rising. Regulation is also a key factor in driving that cost, as is growing third-party liability and the prospect of class action litigation. Mega data breaches involving more than 1 million records are more frequent and expensive. In July of 2019, Capital One was hit by one of the largest ever breaches in the banking sector, with approximately 100 million customers in the US impacted. This resulted in being fined $80 million by the US bank regulators. Yet this breach, as large as it is by no means the largest in recent years. Increasing regulatory exposure at home and overseas. Data protection and privacy regulation is increasing in scope and geography. This is creating more stringent requirements on organizations that collect and use personal data, enhanced rights for consumers, and higher penalties for breaches. In the US, data breach notification requirements have long been an important driver of cyber losses and insurance purchasing. And in recent years, other countries have followed suit. Australia and Canada introduced data breach notification laws in 2018, and others have gone even further. Class action litigation is a developing situation. A number of large breaches have led to class action by consumers or investors. In July of 2019, Equifax reached a $700 million settlement for its 2017 mega data breach. US courts have been battling the question of legal standing, meaning whether claimants have the right to sue, but the trend certainly appears to be in favor of those plaintiffs. Statutory and regulatory changes could also facilitate compensation for data breaches. The California Consumer Privacy Act, for example, provides a mechanism for consumers to sue businesses and, in a first for the US, sets statutory damages for data breaches. Buying a company can bring along cyber risk. Cyber exposures need to be a hot topic in every M&A. For example, in 2018, the Marriott breach, which has resulted in international hotel groups facing a fine of almost $130 million from regulators, was actually traced to an intrusion in 2014 at Starwood, a hotel group that it acquired in 2016. Even the best protected companies can be exposed if they acquire a company with weak cybersecurity or existing vulnerabilities. Subsequently, the acquiring firm could be liable for any damage from incidents which predate the merger. And lastly, nation states increase our risk. The involvement of nation states in cyber attacks is an increasing risk for companies, no doubt. Major events like the elections and COVID-19 present significant opportunities for the bad guys. And during 2020, Google said it had blocked over 11,000 government-sponsored potential cyber attacks per quarter, ranging from phishing campaigns to less common DDoS attacks. Recent years have seen critical infrastructure, such as ports and terminals and oil and gas installations, hit by cyber attacks and ransomware campaigns. Most recently, you'll recall the attack on the water system in Florida. Sophisticated attack techniques and malware may also be filtering down to cyber criminals, while nation-state involvement is providing increased funding to those hackers. Even where companies are not directly targeted, state-backed cyber attacks can cause collateral damage, as seen with the NotPetya malware attack. Now, in wrapping up, here's my final thought. Be on the lookout for that KO punch. In boxing, fighters need to be able to take a punch and keep on fighting. In business, cyber resilience can allow us to do just that. Moreover, including cyber resilience in long-term strategic plans can create that necessary and continual strategic conversation between an entity's technology and strategic leaders. And because of that, a cyber resilient approach can not only bolster readiness within an entity, but can also reduce costs, make the business more efficient and effective. So that's what I had to share with you today, and I hope that you found it informative and helpful. Thank you for your time and attention. Now, stay safe and healthy.
This concludes the DRI Resilience Excellence Summit, our special online event. I know I've enjoyed it and learned a lot, and I hope you have as well. I'd like to once again thank our exclusive sponsor, BlackBerry, as well as our incredible, knowledgeable speakers and the team here at DRI who made this possible. I'd also like to congratulate all the finalists and winners of the Awards of Excellence. You may apply for 2 CEAPs for each day of the summit for a total of 6. The summit will also be available for viewing on our website. All registrants will receive an email when it has been posted to the site. Thank you all for attending and continuing to support our vision of a more resilient world. This has been a production of DRI International, all rights reserved. Thank you.